So dear participants, another 5 minutes is there to start the session. So in the meantime, I would like to, invite from the participant, if you would like to share your, opinion and what you are working on currently, the research problem that you are into right now. So that if you want, you can share with us and as well as with the speaker.
Good morning, sir.
Very good morning, sir.
I am Dr. Yogesh Mahadik from Government Polytechnic, Malwand, Maharashtra.
Very good, sir.
My work was on the energy management in electric vehicle. So
Good.
in my work, I used ultra capacitor along with the battery with different modes.
Good.
And to enhance the driving range of vehicle,
Right.
experimentation was done with my work.
Good.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good, sir. So the idea of this FDP is how you move forward with the present knowledge and try to address the challenges in the EV industry. So do any of the faculties in the participants are trying to do a project with students or have already started a startup on electric vehicles? You can share your project and the ideas. So the idea is to get like-minded people together to work on that particular aspect.
Sir, I am diploma teacher, Yogesh Mahadik.
Okay.
So now we manufacture the e-tractor having range of 30 kilometers and payload capacity of 300 kgs.
Very good, sir.
Yes. And along with that, another project we have prepared that we manufacture the three-wheeler for sugar cane handling. So the capacity is 200 to 250 kgs.
Very interesting.
For the small shopkeepers who can use that vehicle nearby the roads for the sugarcane juices and all these things.
Right.
And the cost is cost of tractor that is 35,000, and cost of that sugarcane juice vehicle with 250 capacity that is 65,000.
Very interesting.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Sir, have you approached for any fundings from the government?
No, sir. No. If any funding facility is available, please give me idea. Then I can apply.
Definitely, sir. That was the yesterday's third session about regarding the funding opportunities for both faculties as well as for the students. Definitely, government is also allotting funds in EV sector as well as for drone technologies. I think we will discuss more about the startup funding in the coming sessions as well. So we will stick to it, sir, and we will try to address the issue. Another 3-4 minutes pending. If any other participant would like to share your idea, please. Dr. G. Purushottam, sir, good morning, sir.
Good morning, Adarsh.
Yes, sir. So we are asking the participants to share their area of work in regards to the electric vehicle so that they can get collaborations from the participants as well as from the speakers.
Yeah, definitely. It is a good idea.
Yes, sir. So we will start the session at 9:30. Another 4 minutes is left. So if anyone would like to share their research work, please? Okay. So,
Yes, sir. Good morning.
yes, Naveen Patil, sir. Good morning.
This is Dr. Naveen from DY Patil University, Pune.
Good, sir.
Sir, actually, recently I have submitted a project on a dissolved system, the Grant Foundation,
Mhm.
to work on the battery thermal management of EV vehicles by using
Good.
encapsulated PCMs.
Mhm.
Whether it is having any just it is under evaluation.
Mhm.
I hope I don't know whether what will happen. Whether I need to ask whether any similar kind of the fundings will be there, because yesterday I'm having the class, but as I could not attend the session
I
due to that.
understand.
Can you share the similar kind? Whether so I can approach for the same.
Yes, definitely, sir. Department of Science and Technology is working towards the electrification of automobiles, a drone and anti-drone technology. And also SERB is also calling for proposals. Definitely, you can work on that. And all the very best for your proposal. Hope it gets the approval from the authority.
Thank you, sir.
Yes.
Just could you share the similar kind of thing, because yesterday I was unable to attend the session.
Yes, all the sessions.
If you could
Yes, sir. All the sessions will be recorded and will be uploaded in the YouTube, and you will get the link for all the sessions.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yes. So I think the time is 9:30. We will start the session. So I welcome all the participants for this 5-day faculty development program on electric vehicles. Yesterday, it was a very fruitful day for all of us to understand how Tesla is working and the greatness of Elon Musk in creating such a wonderful organization that all startups should look into and learn from. Then we moved on to the basics of electric vehicles, how it's been made, what all the technologies behind it. And afternoon, we had another interesting session by Mr. Sriraman talking about the startups ecosystem in India. How, as faculties and as students, you can utilize the funding opportunities being given by the government. So after that, today's session, we will start with Mr. Jitendra Yadav. So he's a product manager from Berkadia. I welcome you, Jitendra sir, to the session.
Thank you, Adarsh.
So before handing out the platform to Mr. Jitendra Yadav, I would like to briefly go through about his experience and achievements. So he did his BTech from Aeronautical Society of India, and then MTech in modeling and simulation from University of Pune. And then he is also postgraduate MBA from Indian School of Business. And his specialization is in leadership and strategy. After that, he joined CAE, Canada. He worked there for 5 years. And then he moved back to India and started working at Honeywell Technology Solutions as system engineer for 2 years. Then he moved on to agile product leader in Carrier company, and currently he's working in Berkadia as a product manager. So with this brief introduction, I welcome you, Jitendra sir, for the today's session. Now the platform is yours.
Great, thank you. Thank you and good morning, everyone. Honorable faculty members from the MITE and leaders from AICTE, students, researchers from various backgrounds. It's an honor today to be with you all at this platform. I believe it's an audience with a strong intellect about EVs, and as much as you want to learn more, I'm equally on the same boat. So I would love for all of us to keep this specific session as much interactive, as much energetic as we can. We're going to use our means of technology, the chat window, that as much as we can, post your questions, post your comments, anything that comes to your mind about the topic that's going on. I would be happy to take up a few seconds on each of those questions as much as we can, considering the time constraint as well. So let's see how well we engage ourselves on this Zoom platform. I'm not very much acquainted with the platform, but let's give it a try. So on the chat window, let's give a round of applause for MITE to organize this awesome workshop for all the faculty members, and everyone from various different parts of the country are able to participate in it. So let's give a great round of applause for the MITE. So I'm starting to push some messages on the chat. Can you all use the chat window? Yes, I can start seeing some round of applause. That's great. Yeah, so this was just an example. This is how we all will engage in this workshop. We'll talk to each other. I want to keep it as much as a two-way communication as possible, and that's the only way we can learn together. Great. So I'm going to share my screen. Others, can you enable the screen sharing, please?
Yes, Jitendra sir, I think you can share now. Just give it a try.
Yeah,
no?
yeah. Just a minute, I'll try again. No, it still says host disabled participant.
Just check, sir.
Yes, it works now. Thank you, Yadav.
Yeah.
Great. Let me know. Please confirm if you can see my screen. It's on. Okay, great. Thank you. So today's session is about innovation management and its application to the EVs, as I refer to as the curious case of EVs, because it's amazing that everyone has become so aware, and this is the need of the hour, to be actually environmentally aware, environmentally conscious of our mother planet Earth. And I think being conscious of EVs is just one step, very important step towards that. So as we move into the session, I would want to ensure that I improvise as I go on. So I would like to know a bit about the audience. So I'm gonna, we're gonna use our technology. I'll post a quick poll. So if you can, a quick vote, sort of yes or no, and what best represents your role. That's one question. So I can improvise my session to suit to your needs best. And also, what industry are you a part of? So I can take some examples and see how well we can apply it to the EV industry, innovations and stories from that. So I'll go back to the chat window. Sorry. Yeah, like I said, I'm going to be struggling a bit to figure out where's the chat window once I shared my screen.
You can press the Windows button and yeah. Yeah.
So here is a link that I posted to everyone. Can you please click on it and answer that specific question? And here is another which asks about your industry background, so I can improvise as we speak. Just these two small quick questions, if you can take a few seconds to answer that, please. And give me a quick thumbs up on the chat window when you're done, so I can start seeing some answers there. We'll wait for 10 more seconds before we continue. Yeah, so there are two links. I see most of you have replied to the first voting button, but if you can put for the second one as well, I've again pasted it in the chat window. Okay, once I get a few that kind of could represent the population that we have today, I'll continue with those. So I'll bring my screen back so we can continue. Great. Sorry. So we've got about 70% of our audience is faculty members, I think, as we all expected. There are students as well, researchers, and we have some representation from the industry. I think that's a fairly great mix of the audience. I'll try to have more examples from the academics industry and see how that helps the audience in a better way. In terms of industry background, we've got a majority representation from manufacturing, mechanical, electrical. So I'll try to take examples from that industry as much as I can. And we've got good representation from aero, automobile, combine about 40%. And then there are some other industries. Great. So thank you for answering those two quick questions. It helps me understand the audience a little better, and hopefully I'll be able to engage you in the way that you would love going forward. So is the slide back? Others, can you give me a quick thumbs up? You can see the slide? Okay, great, thank you. All right. So let's try to understand why a course on innovation management, and especially with, I think with the audience of this intellect, we've got majority of our audience today as faculty members. I strongly believe that this audience is going to create future entrepreneurs, and that is why it becomes very important for all of the audience to understand that what are some key principles, key lenses, or key frameworks through which we all can understand how innovation happens. So that is, I feel, a first reason that why are we here, because you are the people who are going to create future entrepreneurs for our country. So it becomes very, very evident and important. I also strongly feel that today we will be learning a few frameworks or lenses through which you can better understand innovation, and also have a very systemic or systems thinking perspective to how to look at the big picture on EVs or this specific industry. There's another reason that I feel, especially for people who are students and entrepreneurs, because you could be, and even the faculty members, I believe, could be our next generation entrepreneurs. I strongly feel that we all should be aware of that. How can we not drown into the waves of disruption? We all hear about disruption so much, right? These days, almost every industry is getting disrupted in one or the other way. And many people say the culprit is software, because it just makes things so simple without having any hardware, without having any money engaged in maintaining and stuff like that. So software has sort of disrupted everything. And of course, a combination of software and innovation as to where do you apply those solutions, that's even more important. So I strongly feel that today a lot of framework lenses that we will learn will help us really go on to that journey, that how can we be proactive to disruption and not just fall into the disruption. So with that quick sort of purpose introduction, let's look at how the workshop outline is going to look like for today. So I have a time check as well, so that I ensure that we are able to be on time. I'm able to give you good time enough for some sort of Q&A, and of course we could always connect later as well. So today's workshop is divided into two sessions, session 1, session 2. Session 1 is more about understanding innovation management, understanding I'm using a phrase here, S-curve, but it's mostly about that how innovative technologies get adopted. That's the main crux of an S-curve. How, because see, once you innovate, it has to get adopted, be able to sell it, commercialize it, right? So how does that happen? And do all nice fancy technologies get adopted? It's a very difficult thing to say in the market, because you have all sorts of customers, all sorts of segments that are looking at your product in a very, very different perspective. So we're going to learn more about that how do we understand that phenomenon of adoption. I'll also touch upon very briefly about theory of disruption, because like I said, one of the key purposes was to or is to be able to ride that wave of disruption and not to get drowned into it. We'll touch upon a little bit on that, and then I would leave a lot of points for self-reflection as you are on this journey of entrepreneurship, creating new products. How do you self-reflect and understand that, what do I do so that I can continue to innovate and not fall for any other competitor or any other small startup, disrupting your solution. A very quick teaser of how the session 2 is going to look like. Session 2 will focus more on organization structures for innovation. We all have, I think, heard about great companies with great balance sheets, great financial operation. Because they're not able to innovate, they shut down. Big firms, right? Organization structures seem to be one of the big driving factor, and it equally applies to even educational institutes. See how the educational institutes org structures have evolved with the technology, with the online learning coming in, right? We'll touch upon a little bit on that because that opens up our eyes as we are budding entrepreneurs here. A lot of people, how will you make an organization? At the end, it's all about making a company there, right? And that's successful. So how will you structure yourself so you can innovate? And then post that, I'll touch upon briefly that once you have a product and it really solves a problem, how do you bind it to the market in terms of communicating a value proposition so that you can commercialize your product? And also, how do you come up with a business model in this space of electric vehicles industry? Trust me, it's very energetic space. I think EV is the most happening space right now. You've heard a lot from various speakers, and Mr. Manjunath yesterday, spoke about how Tesla is looking at so aggressively into, disrupting this space, so that even the incumbents like the big, Fords and GMs of the world, they are not able to do what a new company could do. And I'm sure there are going to be great examples in our country as well as we go forward. So this is a quick outline of the workshop today. And in between, whenever you have questions as we run through, please keep posting on the chat window. I will revisit them in our last 10 or 15 minutes when we have just before the session. Okay, great. So let's start diving into it and scratch the surface of innovation. So I'll start with this, quick thing to understand, and maybe a few answers from from all of you on the chat window. What do you feel is innovation about? What is innovation? If you can put a few answers on the chat window, please. No answers yet. This has to be engaging. So if you can put a few answers on what do you feel innovation is about? Improvising. Okay, a couple more answers, please. Something which is better than previous one. Very true. Creating something new. Yeah. Identifying something new. So new comes as a common word, something new. It has to be. Okay, great. Creating new things using already existing technology. Makes it even more challenging, right? Creating something new with existing tech. Oh, new ideas. Great. So very interesting. And again, I really like how we are participating. So please continue to do that ways, right? And so let's move on. I think you would see that that what I intended to cover, or what you are posting in the messages, kind of gets covered into these four big categories. Something new, unique product. That is what we feel innovation be about. Something that makes our life easy and comfortable, isn't it? I mean, I'm sitting here, I want to play some music. I just call out, Alexa, play this song, and there's a song that is played for you, the song of your choice, right? Just sitting, not touching anything, just speaking what you want to, just like you talk to a human, right? Comfort. So that drives innovation as well. Creativity, new ideas, something creative that people haven't seen earlier, or people could not even expect, creating something like that. Solving complex problems as well. I think it also came in the chat, that when you solve problems that lead to better outcomes, better comfort for people, better outcomes for businesses, that is also innovation. Very true. And if you ask me, it kind of all overlaps into each other. But as we walk out of today's session, I feel that there's a framework, there's a lens that we can kind of have in our hand when you want to understand what innovation is. And again, a lot of it is my thoughts. I would love for you people to put on chat window if you feel something different. I feel that and all of you are absolutely right. Innovation, there has to be some creativity, there has to be some uniqueness, something new, right? Either it can be identifying a problem that no one has ever identified, right? Because people were just sleeping on that problem, but you woke up and you found, oh, I can solve this problem. It could be about not just identifying problems, but even solutions to those problems which have already existed so far, and no one has solved them in a way that you can, right? So that is true. So that's the piece of creativity, and I'm putting this in a by using the symbol of gears, because I feel that these three things that in this framework, they have to be very harmonically moving, right? Without one getting jammed doesn't drive the other. The second thing that I feel, there has to be creativity. That's the first thing. The second thing I feel is that there has to be a flawless execution, right? So if you have identified a problem, if you have a solution in your mind, and if you're not able to bring it up in a way that it can be productified, or it can be told to people that, look, use this, and you've executed that whole plan in an awesome way. It is incomplete. Innovation is incomplete without execution. So execution is the second gear. You've heard of the brand Nike, right? And most many innovation guys, they call this abbreviation Nike as a novel idea and killer execution. So it is like that. Yeah, you have to be a Nike. There has to be a novel idea. There has to be a killer execution. I think there is a third thing which people often ignore. But as we walk out of this workshop, we all should be cognizant about that, which is commercialization. Very, very important. That solution has to be able to commercialize. Otherwise, it will not get adopted. People who have been waiting for your solutions, and you as entrepreneurs are actually pushing solutions to people. If it cannot be commercialized, that means if you don't make any money out of it, how will you sustain your business? How will you sustain and continue to innovate? No, you have to keep getting funds. You have to keep getting money from your customers, right? That is the third gear. And I believe that all these three gears, they have to be moving frictionless, and they have to be moving in such a frictionless manner that the actual, juice that kind of emerges out of these three gears when they rotate in harmonically is true innovation. Now you can take great examples that are creative, people have executed them awesome, and there's a business model that using which the product can be commercialized. Great examples exist. On the chat window, can you put a few products that you feel or some companies that has done these three things really, really awesome? I want to see some examples. Okay, so there's one answer, Amazon. Great example. Swiggy. Let's see a couple more examples that you feel has done that firm has done these things, three things very well. Tesla, ID. I like that example, ID, a lot. I hope ID, you're talking about the brand that does the food products, right? Yeah. Ola, again, a cab hailing company. Very good example. Great. Thank you, folks, for engaging in this way. This is really good. I really like to see examples that I can't think of, and you have it on your head. That's the way I learn about how this frame it to think at how companies are innovating. Right. Thank you. Great. So as we understand innovation, like I said, it becomes even more important that how do we manage innovation? How do we make things happen really, right? So there is depth piece of it, which is you have to have great people, you have to have great research people who can do things, but at the same time, how do you manage that that whole process? That is what innovation management is about. So we're going to look at the framework of how do you manage innovation through a couple of questions, actually, because I feel that curious minds get the best out of anything. So curious minds ask questions, right? So a few questions that you can ask about how do you manage innovation is, first, for example, how does someone know the right time to innovate? And people, my friends that are in audience today, that are trying to or willing to jump into the EV space, this is the question in their head, that what is the right time to innovate? Because EVs have been for fairly long time in the industry now, fairly long time, right? They haven't been able to click so much, So what is it that defines that right time to jump into a technology, innovating or using it, right? So that is one question that comes to my mind straightforward. The second question that comes is, how does someone decide if I can adopt a new technology? A few days back, and I haven't bought a car yet, but I was hunting, exploring which car should I buy. And then, of course, we have an amazing product by Tata, right? Tata nexon-ev. I'm not endorsing it, but this is a great example coming in our country about a company, an Indian company, really sort of trying to disrupt the Indian market with their EV products. But how do I know if I can adopt it? And I'm guessing you probably have very similar questions as well. That is this the right time to buy an EV car, or is this the right time to buy an EV product, right? How does someone figure out how much and when to invest in a technology? Now, there are two aspects to it, right? One is, if you're an entrepreneur, you want to be very careful about what in the EV space you want to invest on. Is it battery? Is it hills? Is it solar panels that could help charge the vehicle on the fly? What is it that you invest in? How much, and then at what time? I think a key question that emerges as well. And a fourth one is, how does a firm avoid disruption? How do you keep sort of your eyes wide open? And hey, there is something happening in a garage, in my neighborhood. How do I be proactive to that and not just fall for it, right? And many a times that really happens. And I'll talk about it, and when we talk about the theory of disruption, that how we kind of fall for disruption in this space, EV space specifically. Great. So as I continue to make progress, I just wanted to check a very quick response from you folks on chat window. Is my speed okay? Am I going on the right flow, with the right flow? Do you want me to slow down, pace up? Anything that, can you share a few opinions, please, on the chat window? Are you with me? Are you enjoying it? Okay, so I'm getting a message that it's fine for you people. Okay. Great, thank you. Thanks for confirming it. It helps me a lot. All right, so now we so far we just scratched the surface of innovation. What questions are we intending, or at least we will try to answer? And again, I'm telling you, if I could answer all of these questions, I could open an awesome firm for myself, right? But many a times, especially in the EV space, you would see that there are probably no right answers to these questions. But having a framework or a lens through which you can see this EV space, EV industry, will help you in your quest to get those answers. And that's really the intent, right? I'm not prescribing that you should do this to get those answers, but it's like, hey, look, this is the lens, use it. As if you're an entrepreneur, if you're a faculty member, how do you guide people, the budding entrepreneurs for future for our country, right? So that's what we want to look at. Let's dive in a little deeper now, and we're going to talk about a framework of innovation, which we refer as an S-curve. Okay, so I'm going to show that to you, but let me talk a bit about, in very simple words, what an S-curve is. So an S-curve is an innovation framework or innovation tool that you can use it for a technology or even a process to understand that how with time, how a product has developed, right? Early stages of development, how it has accelerated, right? So once it is developed and you sort of launch it into the market, how it got accelerated, how it got the traction into the market that people pulled this product to use it in their lives. So that is the acceleration. And then when a product gets fairly mature, dominant, how does it stabilize? So how does it happen that no more further people are buying your product because the technology or the solution that you were providing has sort of saturated now? People have felt that, oh, look, there is nothing beyond this to innovate, nothing beyond this to go further. So that's what really an S-curve captures, 3 phases of your product: early development, the big acceleration phase, and then you sort of stabilize. Let's take a quick sort of example from one of the research papers that I've picked this. I'll give you the all references at the end. This is an example of a couple of S-curves, for the VCR industry, for example, the dots that you see, again, for US markets, because you get really good data on the US markets. The fact that, the sales and all have been so organized from very, very early in time. So you see the data from 1980s. This could be the kind of early development phase of the VCR product. Okay, I think you're not able to see my mouse. Yeah. So this could be an early phase of the product. The initial, you could say about 4 or 5 years, very early development. The product kind of got accepted by people here that you see, from 1985 onwards, all the way till 1990, 92 even. There's a steep acceleration of how many households have bought the VCR product. So that's what I was calling as acceleration, traction that your product gets. If you see, all the way till 1998, there's still some acceleration, but not so fast. The ramp kind of goes less inclined. And then it kind of stabilizes, and you don't see, in fact, you see a dip even at 2002, 2004, probably the time when CDs started coming in. And you saw that it kind of, just got stabilized after about 1998 or so, right? No major increase in adoption of the product. So 3 phases, right? Development, acceleration, stabilization. You can see a similar example for cell phone industry. Look at how fast it has jumped off from the early development. So early development is probably only 2 or 3 years here, and then it kind of picked up really fast, still picking up. We don't have data for now, but you would see that as a product has got great adoption. So this is, in a sense, what it is. Wikipedia has got a great article on this, from where I'm showing you this graph as well, which is a very simple sort of explanation about that, how an S-curve represents the life cycle of an innovation product or technology. Okay, so it and I'm going to give you a quick example that explains it pretty well, a video that I really like. So I'm going to play that for you. But if you see, the blue line is about your adoption of your product. So what happens is there is a group of people that we call as innovators. They adopt your product really fast, because initially when you launch a product, it's not so stable, it's probably expensive, but still there will be people who will buy your product, who will jump into it. And those are the guys who are called early adopters, innovators. Then there's an early majority, about 34% of your customers are like, hey, look, it seems this product is giving good response. There are people buying for it, and with the word of mouth, it expands. And then there's an early majority that starts buying the product. There is a late majority and laggards. What they say is like, no, I'm good with what I have. I'm able to do my job with the technology that I have. Why do I switch to a new one? And trust me, as entrepreneurs, you will get this question a lot, and you would have to break that mindset as well, that why should people switch from something that they're already doing to something new, right? That you are offering as a solution. So just for example, if you come up with a new way of manufacturing a battery, and maybe a new raw material, and people have been using, for example, lithium-ion batteries, and then you say, hey, look, I've come up with this new technology that is better, right? There will always be people who will jump on it. These are the innovators. They're going to try your product. The people who are going to early adopt, but there'll be a lot of people. You see 34 plus 16, about 50% of people will tell you that we are good with lithium ion, we don't need to jump to, unless these early adopters, early majority, are able to influence these people as well. So this is amazing, because it's going to answer a couple of questions for us, right? You remember in the beginning we were talking about, how do we know that a product will get adopted in the tech space? Okay, so I'm going to play a video that I really like about the way it explains S-curve in a sense. So I'm going to play that for you all now. I'll do a pause in between just to check if you were able to listen to the audio on this video. Okay, so I'm going to play. Okay, I paused it. Are you able to listen to the audio on this video, please? Can you answer on chat window if it is a yes or no? Okay, great, awesome. Thank you. Let's enjoy this video.
Have you ever noticed that some people adopt new products or behaviors sooner than others? In 1962, Everett Rogers, a professor of rural psychology, developed a theory called the Diffusion of Innovations to explain this phenomenon. Rogers found that individuals within any society fall into one of 5 different adopter groups based on how early or how quickly they adopt an innovation. Rogers' theory tells us that if you want to promote the widespread adoption of a new behavior like these, you need to market to each adopter group differently, using distinct communication channels and messages. Let's look at each group to find out more. The innovators are a small but important group because they are always the first to learn about and adopt an innovation. They are risk-taking, adventurous, and like being on the cutting edge. The innovators are responsible for introducing innovations to the larger population because they share their experiences with their friends and communities. The early adopters are also a small, forward-thinking group and are often highly respected as opinion leaders. Their endorsement of an innovation plays a key role in what we call crossing the chasm, which is when the adoption of an innovation bridges the gap between the trendsetters and the majority. About 2/3 of people in a population fall into either the early or late majority groups. The early majority take time to make decisions. They will observe others' experiences and will only adopt a product once they are convinced it has real benefits and that it is the new status quo. The late majority are more resistant to change, though they are very responsive to peer pressure. They want innovations to be very well tested and widely used before they will risk trying it. Finally, the last group to adopt a new product or innovation is called the laggards. Laggards are highly resistant to change, and they also can be hard to reach with marketing campaigns because they often have very minimal exposure to media. Laggards wait until an innovation is completely mainstream before they adopt it, and in some cases, they never do. Think of some global innovations in recent years. Social media, for example, spread very fast and many people adopted it within a few years. Other innovations, such as the use of solar power, spread much more slowly and may take decades to reach widespread adoption. So the next time you're promoting a new product or behavior, consider the theory of diffusions of innovations and tailor your communication channels and messages. This will improve your chance of catalyzing widespread adoption.
Great. Hope you you found the video interesting and even clearer than how I was explaining about diffusion. That's why I like to play this video always. I talk about diffusion because it does the job great. But you know, so this is a quick improvisation that I could do is a lot of us are faculty members here, and I think they all are interested in how do you mathematically define this model? How do I look at it from a lens of mathematics? Because that gives a better feeling, you know, not just data supported, but even something that for which a distribution exists that can help us predict and forecast. So this is a very simple model. There are, this is called the Bass diffusion model. There are extended variations of Bass diffusion model that, that based on specific industry, specific context, people could choose, right, and try to forecast really that. So you saw on the y-axis, we had the product performance adoption. The x-axis was the timeline. So to understand really that, what is the time I'm going to forecast? I have a new product. What is the time in which I can reach the acceleration phase, right? And this forecasting will help you understand you then plan your expansion of your business. So if you're an entrepreneur, you're looking at, when will I need to hire 50 plus people? When do I need to hire 100 plus people? And remember, you don't want to be reactive about things. Just because you had a sales hype doesn't mean that you start hiring people, you start expanding, but look at that how your technology could be adopted, and most of it is heuristics based. So nothing, this equation is not a silver bullet that it'll apply to all the innovations and tech, but it does apply to most of the innovations and tech with certain caveats, certain behaviors that it is not able to capture, the blips typically, but it does, heuristically, it does apply to most of the new innovations and technology. So if you are working on something new, I would heavily recommend that you look at the BAS diffusion model. It's a fairly simple equation. The capital F of T is the installed base fraction, which is your, as on today, how many of the products are already there in the market, how many customers have bought it. Small f of T is the change of that installed base fraction. This is typically what you want to sort of figure out. P is the coefficient of innovation. So remember, the early adopters, these are the people who are your innovators, early adopters. The P coefficient kind of captures that. The early majority and other people who buy out of imitating what other people are doing, how Q is a coefficient that kind of captures that. I also wanted, and I hope I'm doing good on time, it's 10:10. I also want to show, maybe if it helps, how can you use this equation for a very simple model and do it with Microsoft Excel. So let me see. I had this here. Yeah. So this is a simple model that you could do for your product that you're building, or something that you're working on in your industry. What you're really doing is, and again, these are numbers that are taken up just for examples. So there's a market size, for example. The market size M hasn't been captured, and I'll tell you how can you do that. That is really the starting point in the equation. So let's say this is the big market that you're trying to capture. 100 people, just for numbers. You start with an innovation coefficient P, you start with an imitation or contagion coefficient Q. How do you get these numbers? You can get these numbers from heuristics, which is, if you look at some papers that have really not just projected, but that have given you that have tracked the sales data for almost 20 years, and they might say, like, for this kind of product, typically these are the P's and Q's, and you could use them for your initial forecasting. So yeah, this is a sheet that I'll share with Mr. Adarsh, that he can share with the audience later. But a very simple model. You start at time t0. What kind of sales you had at time t1, and then this formula basically, in a sense, captures that that equation that I was showing you earlier. And what you see really is, so for example, just the sales, you see that there's going to be an acceleration, and then there's going to be a fall of the sales, because only less people towards the end of the tail are now adopting to your thing. But let's look at the S curve, which is a typical cumulative sales. So in this specific example, just because it is a cooked up example, you see that there is as soon as development happens, there's a very fast acceleration that happens and then kind of stabilizes. When you put your real data, real coefficients, you will not see this kind of behavior. So yeah, this is something that I can share with Mr. Adarsh later, and hopefully it'll be able to help you all on this journey to understand the S curve. Great. Now let's look at, we learned about something. Let's look at why is it so important, and how it can help us, again, by means of some questions. But before I go and talk about why is it important, from whatever you saw just so far, can you give me your thoughts that how it will help you people? I mean, just at the face of it, now that you learned something new, how it will help you people. Can you ping something on the chat window, please? Just a few comments on how do you feel it'll help you. Not seeing anything yet? Help in PLM, yes. Product lifecycle management for sure. A few more answers, please. And again, this is also to check how well we are, how well you are with me. Have I? Okay, planning the marketing campaigns, very, very true. You know, when in a firm, if you have your new startup, when do you invest on marketing, right? And what messages do you want to give? Because very good point that Adarsh brought up is, because of the different sections of people that you are targeting, your marketing campaigns are very different. You know, for innovators, they are very different. The value proposition for innovators is very different. The value proposition for early majority is very different. So for EVs, for example, you want to give early adopters a feeling of safety, a feeling that, hey, look, your vehicle doesn't get shut down on the way. If it does, I have this big, awesome network of people or of companies that will come and provide you on-road assistance. That could be a theme of marketing campaign that could make me feel better as a potential buyer of an EV. When you go to Laggards and when you're giving to late adopters, you cannot even talk about accidents with them or about engine shutting down, motor shutting down, because the moment they hear that, it's going to produce resistance. So what your marketing messages would be mostly around, look, how people over the years have used this product and how what they have said. On Amazon, for example, reviews are a great thing to push your product to the laggards and late adopters, because they go with what people say about your product, right? Thank you. Thanks, Adarsh, for bringing that up. Okay, but here are some, again, quick thoughts, and I would love for people to please keep engaging, because that's what is going to keep us more energetic. It helps us knowing when can we invest or can we start R&D on a new product and technology launch. So what do I mean by that? You saw that a typical S curve is kind of, there's an early development, there's an acceleration, then it starts stabilizing. Imagine if you had the power to know on time when will your product start stabilizing, because that is the time when you want to start up something new, when you want to start a new product coming out to your customers, so that, look, people who are satisfied with what you have, but not more people are adopting and your product has stabilized, you come up with a new product, new tech, and launch it for people who haven't yet adopted your product. That could be amazing. If you have that sort of data, that sort of forecasting being available to you. Paradigm shifts in innovation and technology. We're going to look at some really good examples as we jump into theory of disruption, but there are some innovations which are competence destroying. Electric propulsion, for example, is competence destroying. None of the propulsion systems like combustion engines or turbine engines, be it their supply chain, be it what materials they need, is totally different than electric propulsion. Electric propulsion is a paradigm shift, right? And you as entrepreneurs, you could think about that. What is going to be my biggest barrier when I am looking at this paradigm shift, right? Look at the adoption curve. Look at how people have adopted IC engines. What could be my biggest hurdle or burden when it comes to electric propulsion? And that also helps you define an innovation strategy. Bigger shifts versus smaller frequent shifts, right? If you see adoption curves, S curves for hybrid vehicles, you would be alarmed that even though something that offers you, greater efficiency with almost same or maybe a little higher on the cost, hasn't been able to get adopted so big time. Hybrid vehicles is especially in the Indian market, hasn't been adopted so big time, in spite of being such a good innovation. So hybrid vehicle is that sort of, you could call it as a smaller frequent shift. A big shift is completely moving from an IC engine to a completely electrical driven motor. So very big shift versus small frequent shift. What could be an innovation strategy for a company? Companies in India, Tata and other big giants, MNC giants like Honda, Hyundai, in the EV space have explored hybrid vehicles for a big time, right? Thinking that, hey, look, a smaller frequent shift could help rather than completely switching our supply chain, because it's going to disrupt us and no one wants to get disrupted, right? I mean, how would you want to disrupt yourself? You have an awesome supply chain, that awesome suppliers that give you these, internal combustion engines and their parts. And now you're going to tell them that, hey, look, we are not moving in this direction. We are moving in the EV direction. How can you, manage that? So it's a big challenge for incumbents, and we'll talk about it a little on the theory of disruption. I don't want to, give you a detailed teaser for now, but so now that we know it's so important, let's look at from one of the research papers that I picked up this graphic about the electric car share of sales to 2005 to 2050. This is forecasting, and this is S-curves equation, just what we saw a few minutes back. How does a lot of consulting firms come up with these forecasts so that companies could figure out that what could be a potential timeline when you want to jump into this? So imagine there are firms that are like, hey, look, we are not interested in doing R&D. When a sufficient R&D has happened, we are going to buy the firm that has done it. We'll adopt it that way. We don't have to invest so much in early adopters and finding out innovators and investing big time in R&D. We'll buy that startup or that firm when they come at this timeline, acceleration timeline. So this helps companies make strategic choices about when do they want to buy startups, when do they want to invest in R&D. It helps them a lot. So this is a typical S-curve that you see, for example, from 2005, like I said, EVs have been there for a fairly long time. The adoption hasn't been that great. But if you zoom into this part of the lens, right, 2000 till 2019 or so, if you zoom in really, the last few years from 2015 onwards, there's a very, very fast, steep adoption of EVs in European market. Sorry. And then you see these ER 40%. These are coefficients. When you tune them, you could see that what an aggressive adoption could look like, what a partial fulfillment adoption could look like, what a sort of average adoption could look like, multiple scenarios, because these are all forecasting scenarios. They're not going to tell you the silver bullet that this is what it is. They will tell you that this is the band that you could play around your strategy. And so for budding entrepreneurs, for faculty members who will produce entrepreneurs in the future, I feel that just by looking at something heuristics based S-curves, we can come up with ideas and solutions. So I'll just give a very, very small example here. If you are passionate about batteries, for example, what is the right time that an S-curve can help you jump into the EV battery business, right? So if it's, for example, you're looking for drones that are needed, their segmentation is very different. They need powerful yet lightweight batteries. Moving vehicles typically will be having very similar needs. There could be a lot of heavy EV vehicles that may not be so much worried about the weight of the battery, but they're so much worried about the power, the kind of torque that they should be able to produce. So what for me would be a right time to sort of start R&D. So typically you want to start R&D like 5 years or 4 years, come up with an awesome product. And then I know there's going to be a acceleration in this timeline, 2025 to 2035. These 10 years, there is going to be an accelerated adoption of EVs, right? So does it make a lot of sense for me to start R&D now, or should I, maybe sometimes you feel I should have started it 5 years back, and at least that's a lesson learned, because then you can be fast in what you do. By the way, there's another a typical marketing way of doing or coming up with S-curves as well, and that is by just looking at preferences or choices, right? So I want to give you that example. I wanted to do it with you all, but I want to be cognizant about time. I want to switch to other topic. But if you can ask a specific population that one simple question: by when would you have adopted an electric car? Very simple question. By when would you have adopted an electric car? You give them choices: 2021, 25, 2030, 2035, 2040. Ask that population that question. You would see various sort of answers. There will be people who want to buy an EV in 2021. Because they are the people now that the market is booming. They're early adopters. They're not innovators, because innovators have already bought those vehicles and they've given you reviews, so you read them and kind of adopt accordingly. But yeah, early adopters, even early majority, you would see that people want to buy till 2025, but you will always have population that will buy those vehicles in 2030 or adopt in 2035. And based on how good sample that you take from that population, you can do a forecasted S-curve for that market. So if you're doing it for, for example, Mangalore market, and if you find out a good sample of people that sort of represent that market, you could come up with an S-curve for that market. And if you want to operate or do entrepreneurship in that market, you will get a very good forecast. And again, you keep doing it because people's preferences or choices change with time, right? So you keep doing it every 6 months, 8 months to see how you could thrive in that business. Okay, great. So again, jumping out a bit in and out of the EV space, because there are awesome, great examples in other spaces as well. This is some data that I picked up from the HBR.org, the Harvard Business Review magazine, and again for US households. So you see a lot of technologies, they sort of have that S-curve adoption most of the times. Let's look at a few examples. So this black line is about the electricity. So electricity 1900s, and very accelerated development, kind of slows down a bit and then picks up again and stabilizes. Very interesting. Look at the clothes washer. There's an adoption and then there's a fall, because there's a very interesting story to it about, and I think there were many firms who struggled with why people were not using clothes washer for washing clothes, because the way it impacted the fabric at that point in time. I have a very sort of a caveat that you all should have in mind about if you are doing this exercise for EVs. Imagine, can we have these kind of fall downs in the adoption of EVs? In between, you're in acceleration mode, and suddenly, the adoption reduces. Can that happen? You should think about the macro factors in here. And one of the macro factors, I think yesterday very well, the chief guest also brought up that what we feel as green is going to require electricity. And if electricity itself is not so green, the environment is going to get affected in an adverse way, because now there is a heavy demand of EVs. The demand of electricity increases. I think there's a forecast that it will increase up to at least 7 to 8%, than the consumption that we have today. Already, you see grids running full in India, but with the EV adoption, that demand is going to go high up by at least 7 or 8%. So will it continue to remain that green unless the means of producing electricity become more greener? That's one factor, one macro factor. The other macro factor that you should all consider is when the demand for EVs increase, the prices for EVs are going to come down, because with evolution in technology, the materials prices, battery pricing, everything is going to fall down, so that it's going to be very challenging for you to sort of differentiate in terms of price an EV and a petrol vehicle, for example. They would almost be hitting the same numbers. So when the price falls down, the demand for EVs go high, the demand for petrol vehicles goes down, the demand for petrol itself is going to go down. So what happens when the demand goes down? The prices could fall as well. So what if the prices for petrol fall, and then people really start evaluating, hey, look, the price, the maintenance and expenses of an EV, maintenance and expenses of an petrol vehicle is almost hitting the same because the prices of fuel have fallen down significantly. Why should I now again, go to an EV which has got disadvantages in terms of the range that it can travel and charging and so on and so forth, infrastructure? There is a high chance that the adoption sort of goes down because maybe the petrol prices, again, I'm just sort of cooking it up to give you those caveats that we should all consider, that an S-curve doesn't always mean a steady growth. It could always mean, based on the macro factors, that your adoption will fall for in the EV industry. So that's just something I wanted to, call about. Let's go a bit fast here so I can jump to the next topic. Key takeaways from the S-curve, that it helps us forecast adoption. And for entrepreneurs, this is awesome because then you can really look at how do we do it. Forecast investment opportunities as well. So for people who are investors and who want to invest in such technologies, it helps you figure out that right time or time window band that you should invest in. Others also talk about PLM, right? So it helps you really forecast the life cycle of the product or technology. That's amazing because if you can know how many years will my product live in market, you can know when do I start the new tech curve, right? So that's how it'll help. Again, the purpose of me going through this is about giving you that framework. Like I said, these are not perfect answers to those questions. If how, for example, EV is going to forecast, it takes a lot of research, R&D to do it, and it's amazing with the intellect that we have today. I hope it will spark some thoughts and it will spark some ideas for you to in those research areas as well. Great. So this was it about S-curves. I want to switch to a topic about that's also close to my heart, about the types of innovation, right? So you would see, you would hear a lot that, is this innovation disruptive? Is this innovation? And there are these terms that I'll talk about: competence enhancing, competence destroying. This helps a lot, knowing that if your innovation is competence enhancing, adoption may not be a big challenge for you. If it's competence destroying, it's disruptive, adoption could be a big challenge for you. There are great examples that you would see as well. At the same time, people look at it through the lens of incremental and discontinuous as well. So that's something that in our session 2, I'll talk a bit about how organizations manage incremental and discontinuous organization in the EV space, to be specific. Let's talk a quick look at what a competence enhancing innovation is. So, as the name suggests, it enhances competence. That means if, and there was an answer that someone, when I asked innovation, someone said, building something new with existing tech. Here, in terms of, it's not tech, but it's existing competence. If you're able to innovate, enhance the experience with existing competence in the firm, that is what competence enhancing is. You could call this as one of the big competence enhancing example is turbocharging engines, turbocharged engines. Earlier, they were just naturally aspirated IC engines, and then with the same competence, you were able to figure out that, hey, look, if you pump more pressurized air into the inlet, you could get better performance. So that's the sort of principle that brought the need of turbocharging, that you can actually compress the air with the air that comes out from the exhaust, and you could use that for your efficiency gain and power gain. Sorry, not efficiency gain, more on the power and the extra torque that you get. So it helps you for your existing products, right? It helps you be more efficient in your approach. Competence enhancing focuses on increasing efficiency. If I am having a mileage in my vehicle of 20 kmpl, what do I do to go to 25 kmpl? If I'm having a torque of 70 Newton meter, how do I go to 100 Newton meter and at the same RPMs? These are some competence enhancing innovations. A lot of it sometimes is about process. How do we do things better so that we can produce a better outcome with just the same competence that we are having? Assembly lines, for example, are great competence enhancing innovations. You've been doing something in a way, that produced 8 vehicles an hour, and now you invested heavy in an assembly line, brought up new robotic arms that let you do the job which humans were doing earlier in a much more faster and accurate way. You improve the capacity of your assembly line to maybe 15 vehicles an hour, and that is a competence enhancing innovation. There are a lot of great examples. If you go to B schools, you typically hear this example of Gillette blade, right? Gillette has been innovating a lot on the shaving razors, and you see, from a single blade, you get a twin blade razor, you get a triple blade in Mac 4, Mac 5, and whatnot. You're not really doing anything significantly different or disruptive. All you're doing is continuous incremental innovations on that. So that is competence enhancing. With the existing competencies, you're able to be better and better. There's another sort of lens that I want all of us to look at, is a competence destroying innovation. A competence destroying, as the name itself suggests, is basically is not going to be possible with your existing competencies, because it requires something very new materials, new sort of thought process, new business models as well. A great example of competence destroying that we were referring to it earlier was electrical propulsion. It's very different. You don't need those materials. You probably don't. You need very different sort of supply chain systems when you move from a firm that was manufacturing combustion engines. You move to a firm which is now giving EV motors. Your system is going to totally change. If you grow really big in EV, you would even stop doing IC engines. So you would even lay off people, shut down your firms. And that itself is a example of competence destroying, because core concepts are overturned. There are so many examples. Look at the film photography versus digital. Why did it take so much amount of time for Kodak to figure out that they could be a giant in digital, even though first few patents in the digital photography came from Kodak, but they couldn't evolve, they couldn't innovate on that, right? Again, competence destroying, very, very difficult innovation that firms, or especially incumbents, fail at, because they're not able to imagine how could you do that. And that's where I'm going to talk about disruptive innovation, is why incumbents, when I say incumbents, it's about big firms in the market, why they're not able to come up with disruptive ideas or disruptive innovations. All right, so we'll talk about that. A competence destroying is new technology. It's a new space altogether. That's why firms, they take a lot of time, decision making, strategy. Should we do it? Should we not do it? It requires new skills and knowledge. That means that could your engineers who have been working on IC engines, and they're the guys who know in and out of pistons and piston rings and so on, how do you move them to an industry that is going to produce electric motors? You're going to need very different skills, very different knowledge. What are you going to do with people? Will you fire them? Will you? So that's another big barrier of competence destroying innovations in incumbents. Very difficult for them to make a choice there. Again, some examples: cassettes to CDs. What do you think firms would have done? Because all their supply chain was different. For cassettes, you needed different materials. For CDs, you needed different. A blockbuster story. Again, I'll come to that a little bit. But these are some. This is another framework or lens to look at. That is this innovation competence destroying? Because if it is, it's going to need a very different surgical approach. Especially if you're an entrepreneur, your adoptions will be very different. Your chances of getting funding would be very, very different, because actually low, because not a big audience will be able to believe you that your thing will be disruptive. If you look at most of the times, whether something is disruptive or not, you only get to know in hindsight when things have happened. So it's so difficult to forecast or project that, hey, look, this is a disruptive innovation, because you wouldn't know unless it has really disrupted something. But how do we sort of look at that? I'm going to talk about that a bit. Here is another a theory that explains that why incumbents are not able to move out of the incremental or the competence enhancing innovations. So again, this is related to a product life cycle itself, that you start with something on the experimentation. I feel that in the EV space, we are doing a lot of experimentation as of now. When you do a lot of experimentation, you are launching new products, new features. Every 6 months, something new comes up. Because you haven't really concluded on what could be a de facto design or a dominant design, as they call. This is a theory that looks at it from a lens of dominant design. Because if you have a dominant design, then market settles on that. Be it anything, be it a car, be it any EV space, be it a drone. So drone designs, for example, I don't see we have reached a de facto design there yet. That market has settled upon very different kind of designs. The propeller blades, you could see the propelling mechanisms, geared or not geared, or there's a lot of scope that a dominant design is yet to be reached. And once you reach the dominant design, firms sort of pick up that as the way, because then you want to be profitable. You've invested big time in experimentation in de facto design. Now you want to kind of settle down. So the innovation automatically slows down. And this is the time when that stabilization in the S curve will happen. Your innovation will slow down. You will just keep innovating incremental, nothing really new tech or big. Great. So in the next 10 minutes, I would want to touch a bit on theory of disruption, and then I'll give the time back for Q&A. Theory of disruption. We have heard this a lot. Theory of disruption was introduced by Professor Clayton Christensen, professor in MIT, who wrote the book, The Innovator's Dilemma. So if someone, and especially I would heavily advise, recommend for all the audience in this workshop today that take a copy of that. It's an amazing book, The Innovator's Dilemma. It explains that why firms are not, incumbents especially, are not able to innovate discontinuous or innovate competence destroying innovations, and hence they get disrupted by firms, smaller firms. So this is an amazing theory that he explains well. It didn't get famous right away, but people, when they saw technologies disrupting the firms, that's when that picked up interest, and that book became much more famous after like 10 years down the line when it was written. So as we talk about this, there are, again, I look at it from always what questions it will help me answer. Why are we, studying theory of disruption? So first question that I see is it can help us knowing how does disruption happen? What is that phenomenon that causes disruption? And then second is, how can we ride that wave? Like I said, not drawn into it, but ride that wave. And what lenses in our hands, what tools in our hands can help us identify if a disruption will likely happen? Just when we were starting the course and Mr. Adarsh was asking people to share examples, there was an example that came about electrical tractors. Electrical tractors, imagine, the people or firms are investing in electrical tractors. There are firms, big incumbent firms, who are doing still IC engines, tractors that are propelled by IC engines. How would they identify if a disruption is likely to happen? And trust me, they're very smart people there. So what kind of lenses do they use to know will really a disruption happen, and how can we ride that wave? So that's it. I want to use a video of the Harvard Business Review magazine that explains disruption in a very elegant way, and then I'll touch upon it with a few examples. So I'll play a video. Were you able to listen to the audio? Can you do a quick yes on the chat if the audio was there when I played this? Yes. Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks for confirming.
How does a small, young company beat an industry giant on its own turf? Through what Harvard Business School professor Clayton Christensen calls disruptive innovation. It works like this. big players focus on sustaining innovation, upgrading existing products and services to attract higher-paying customers. But soon, they start to ignore all the regular customers who just want simple, low-cost alternatives. That's where the entrepreneurial company jumps in, with that basic offering. The big guys stay focused on more profitable customers and begin to overserve, adding bells and whistles no one wants to pay for. Meanwhile, the disruptor improves its product to appeal to more people. By the time the incumbent notices, the disruptor has already started to take over the market. The classic example is the steel mini mills, which first produced low-quality rebar, then moved to sheet steel, stealing business from the large mills that had been dominant. More recent disruptors include car makers like Toyota and Hyundai, which launched with economy models, then added luxury features and brands. The only way for industry giants to fight back is by launching their own disruptive innovations. To succeed, they must treat the project as a separate unit with a different business model and growth expectations. Ask, what job do customers need to get done? Segment customers by job, not by product, market size, or demographics. And develop basic, low-cost ways to get the job done. That's how Procter & Gamble came up with Crest White Strips, a cheap do-it-yourself alternative to an expensive dental service. Disruptive innovation creates new markets and reshapes existing ones. To achieve growth in a fast-changing world, you want to be a disruptor. Don't be disrupted.
Great. So again, I think the video explains it in a very elegant way, and that's why I thought I'll share this with you. This example that in the video you saw about the steel industry example, that how mini mills actually disrupted the big steel firms in the US, is an example that Professor Clayton Christensen takes when he explains theory of disruption, and it's a great example. I'll just touch upon very basics of it, and I want to sort of spend some time on understanding what disruption could mean in the EV space, because that would be, I guess, a good takeaway from our session. So in this specific graph that has been taken from the article by Professor Clayton himself. So what you see on the y-axis is the product performance, right? That on the lower side there's the product that performs low, which means it doesn't meet all the functional, social, emotional needs of customers. On the higher side, it meets all the functional needs, and the time as the product evolves. So what happens is, your incumbents, basically, that means the firms that are already in the market. In this case, for example, look at the car industry, let's say. So all the firms like the Fords of the world, Hyundais and Hondas of the world, they are having products which are high performing products, right? And customers are paying for it, so they're kind of meeting the high end need of the market. Now let's say an entrepreneur, a budding entrepreneur from this audience today comes up and starts with coming up with an EV, which is a low range EV. It doesn't meet most of the needs, but there are some section in the customer, some section of people in this market that their needs are very different. Their needs are like, hey, look, I want to commute only 10 kilometers up and down. I never go for long trips. I don't like going for long trips, and I need something that's very low on cost, very low on maintenance cost, very low on my commute cost. And let's say one of the entrepreneurs in this audience comes up with that nice small car that only meets needs of those people. So what's going to happen? Will it impact Honda and Hyundais? No, they're going to be like, look, we are not even in that market. We are making cars for people who want to go on long drives, more safety, bigger vehicles, big families. But this budding entrepreneur starts selling the cars to these people who are on the low end of the market, very small needs, but at the same time, he's able to do it really, really well. Now what happens with the evolving technology and getting better batteries, getting better electric motors, this person has started introducing cars in the market which can go even longer, right? So maybe instead of 10, 12 kilometers, maybe he's now able to go 100 kilometers. Now there was, and of course, the prices also have gone down because with the material prices coming down, there will be a section of people somewhere here. They will start looking at it, like, hey, what's going on there? It seems there is a car that almost meets my needs because I only do 100, 150 kilometers a month, and sorry, on my commute, and it seems it will meet my need. So he starts now, adopting EV this way because now he's able to meet. What will Honda and Hyundais do now? They might start fearing about it. They might feel like, hey, look, something is happening over there. Some of my customers are jumping. But then a laid back firm, let me say a firm which is going to be ignorant, will say, look, those customers, they were anyways not so profitable to me. They were buying my low end cars. They were buying the cheapest variants. I was not making big money. Let me not worry about it. Let me focus on making high end cars still. Okay, so now this person again, got newer cars, newer technology, and it started evolving. His range has now gone to 350 kilometers, and now, boy, some of the customers that were being served by Honda and Hyundai, and the prices have again, almost kind of hit the same. They'll be like, now I want to switch because it's more greener, it's more economic, it's fast, awesome designs, great digital connectivity, and these people will switch. And this is how Professor Clayton explains that disruption happens, because firms, they keep on serving the high-end market, while the disruptor really it's a process, it's a phenomenon. It doesn't happen over months or years. It happens sometimes over decades, that a disruptor slowly starts getting into the mainstream, and that's when the Hyundai and Hondas are going to be like, hey, look, either we buy this firm or we we get disrupted. We have nothing. Our customers have jumped unless we now invest in this technology, which is fairly late now because we have lost most of the talent to this other company, and so that's how disruption happens. A great example that Professor gives about, he gives it with steel industry. I think it is equally applicable to the EV space, especially for people who are investing their time as we speak. In entrepreneurship. So he again, Professor Clayton also gives a framework for people or firms to think about, that when do you kind of start investing. Again, these are S curves. Right now what you see are multiple S curves. So what he says is, don't follow one S curve in a firm. You should have at least two going in parallel. So when you see an S curve for a product has picked up acceleration, it's going fast, start putting your money on a second technology. And any rational company is going to probably throw away that idea. They will be like, I am making so much money in this, and now you're telling me to start investing in another technology. I mean, that's rubbish. How can I allocate my resources? Right? That's why incumbents are not able to really, and that's why startups are able to do this, because startups don't have this. They don't have an existing product that is performing awesome. They have very less to lose, as they say in risk. Startups can take big risk because of the same reason. They're not employing 10,000 people. that even if they invest in something that fails, at best they shut down, right? But firms that have 10,000 people working for them cannot shut down overnight. So, and that's why incumbents are rarely able to come up with disruptive tech. So again, I'm going to move a little fast because I want to give some time for Q&A. So the electric propulsion industry, I think, is disruptive. Just the examples that we saw, right? That today it meets needs of very specific people who are low end in the market, who've got very small needs. For example, a person who's looking at Tata nexon-ev, most of the times would not feel going on really long trips like 600 kilometers and so on. And so those are the people whose needs are going to be met by Tata nexon-ev. Down the line, imagine if other firms are not investing and Tata continues to invest in this tech, they will grow the range to even 1,000 kilometers. And probably the time is not so far when the prices of those vehicles are going to come down as much as to the petrol vehicles, and that's how the disruption will happen. I also want to touch a little bit on air taxis and drones in aviation. How are they disruptive? You've heard a lot about drones, and I think MITE is doing some good work in research in that space. Air taxis as well. Air taxis right now, if you ask me, is there are some good work going on. Lilium is one company that is doing air taxis, and there are probably others as well that I'm not able to recall well. But imagine, whose needs are they meeting? These companies are meeting the needs of filthy rich people right now, because they can, on their convenience, on their leisure, they could just, I make a mood right now to go to my friend's place, and he has an awesome landing place where I can land my air taxi. I'm gonna just go. It takes me 5 minutes to get into the air taxi, and it takes me 10 minutes to go to that person. Sitting on his couch in just half an hour, right? So right now it meets the needs of very small segment, and it's very, very expensive as a technology innovation. But does it mean that commercial aviation people, the Boeings and the Airbuses of the world, or actually the airlines of the world, shouldn't they be worried? Because what they do, they move people from A to B. And what air taxis are doing, they're moving someone as of now, maybe a family as of now, from A to B. So it might seem that this is meeting only a small segment needs. We are meeting big segment needs, but that is how disruption really starts. With time, technology is going to get better, prices are going to come low, regulations will enable more and more air taxis, and airline industry, there's a fairly good chance that they only keep moving towards high range flights, for example, something that takes beyond 10 hours, 12 hours, and the low range flights, which today from, for example, Delhi to Mumbai, Delhi to Bangalore, Delhi to Hyderabad, could be possibly done in those air taxis, better, faster, and maybe cheaper in the time to come. And in some years, when the range of these air taxis grow big, even the airlines would not be able to thrive, survive, unless they switch their business model, which I'll talk about in our section 2 today, what business models, unless they switch business models to air taxis from big airplanes. Another one that you could think about is the mobility industry, that I think is really picking up well, moving from A to B, faster speed, safer, at the same time have fun, enjoy, that kind of thing. So yeah. Well, I am 2 minutes before my time. Hopefully I was able to convey you people a few frameworks, a few lenses to look at how innovation is happening in EV space. How do you classify, how do you forecast, and so on and so forth. So I'm gonna stop sharing screen so that we can have some sort of Q&A before we wrap up. Others? Hope this was engaging for people.
Excuse me, sir. Excuse me.
Yeah, Mr.
Sir, I have a question. You have told that there is a S curve is normally used for innovation strategy and all other things. But can't we apply the statistics over this, because every time the market will actually having a different trend, and also the product may also have required to have some improvements, etc., etc. So can't we take that also into consideration in order to keep the market in a proper way? So please, I want clarification for this.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Mr. Anandraman. I think you bring a great point that what are the other ways, statistical measures to also come to to what an S-curve, for example, could help you achieve. And you're absolutely right. Most of the S-curves, the initial part of the S-curves is statistically arrived at. That's the only way you get the P and Q, the coefficient of innovation and coefficient of imitation, by plotting the real data from the market, because that's the only thing that will decide your slope of that curve. And only for the forecasting part, you could, kind of rely on the Bass diffusion model. That, again, it's a very simple model. There are more complex variants that touch upon the sigmoid function that is also used to, again, plot the same S-curve as sigmoid function. You could have coefficients that are statistically derived, but then they can be used to do the forecasting, just like you would do in any statistical forecasting method as well.
Sir, I agree. But my concept is, for example, if you prepare a model and you will generate a statistical analysis, everything. But before the product being launched, you don't know what is the process which may happen once the product is launched, and what are the drawbacks you may come across. We don't know, because the users has to give the feedback. And for example, what I'm saying is, I am an electrical vehicle user since 2000. So long back, from 20 years only, I'm using that two-wheeler only. I found that when in the beginning when it was being launched, we used to have lead acid batteries for the vehicle, which is a sealed lead acid battery, maintenance free one, which is available from the China market. So, but that particular range was quite small, and we can use that particular set of batteries only for a period of about 1 year. So after that, we have to change the whole system, in fact. So, but when later on, when we come across the lithium batteries or some improved versions of the lead acid battery, we have got some better range, and our vehicle is having better property. So, but by this time, when you have shown one graph, it has been decreasing trend was there in the one of the thing. So these things can't we reciprocate in the middle itself before launching the product itself? That's what my question.
Mm-hmm. Great question, Mr. Andraman. And first of all, hats off to you that you've been such a early innovator of EVs, early adopter of EVs. You have it from 2000. That's actually a great example, I think, for the whole audience here. That's really great. And you touch upon a very great point that from what it seems like the S curve, and then when you look at the real statistical data on sales, you would see behavior that you cannot explain just by the means of the model.
Yes.
There is a saying about models, right? All the models are false. There are some that are useful. The S curve is that model which is false but is useful if looked at for heuristically similar products. So, for example, EV adoption could be very similar. Again, I'm just making a statement, but it has to be proven that an EV adoption might follow, at least in the beginning, the adoption of hybrid vehicles. Because the adoption of hybrid vehicles, especially in the car industry, could give a good sort of representation of sentiments of people, of customers, when they buy, when they move from a purely petrol vehicle to a hybrid vehicle. The sentiments that they have could be very similar on sentiments that people have who move from a purely IC engine to electrical car. You also bring a good example of the lead acid batteries, and this is amazing. I didn't touch upon that, but it is fairly complex as well. That when multiple technologies S curve combined together to influence the S curve of your product. So your product, most of the times, is a combination of technologies, a combination of battery technology, a combination of materials technology, a combination of, motor technology, for example. And if you look at the individual S curves of those, boy, they're going to impact your product S curves for sure. And no equation can predict that unless you come up with a model which is, intertwined from all these technologies that are there. So yeah, very challenging. That's where the limitation comes up, that you cannot use this this framework if you do not have a similar product to whose heuristics you can use.
Sir, in summary, we can say like this, if you have the S curve can be used as a basement curve in order to analyze the product, that's all. So, but not as a final analysis can be done with that same S curve, I feel. Is it okay?
Yes. You could conclude on that. Like I said, it's not a silver bullet. It can help you forecast and then be prepared for something. That's the main thing. That thing might not happen, by the way, but you could still be prepared when it happens.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thanks, Anand Raman, for question.
Jitendra sir, I have one question.
Yeah, yes, please.
So the adoption mentality in different countries, it's different. Let's say in European countries, the adoption to EVs are very quick and people are moving into greener technologies. But when we talk about India, what factors affect the decisions of people, and can you shed some light on the adoption rate that we currently have in India when compared with European countries?
That's you asked me a question that most of the firms are looking an answer to.
Yes.
At least I know that Tata is looking an answer to, and it's a very powerful question in itself. That what influences Indians to adopt a technology like in the EV space, and let me quote that example of. You remember I was sharing a multiple curves that was for US households. You would see a trend that has happened that over from like 1930s, if you see all the S curves or most of the S curves till 2010 maybe, the adoption rates almost till 1980s or 1990s were fairly low. You would see like long sort of acceleration phase, over 10 years product is getting accelerated, matured. When you just look at from maybe 2000 to 2020, those products have got fairly fast adoption rate, right? And it's amazing. I wish I could have got that data for our Indian market. I could not find a good research paper, but I'm sure there are good research papers that talk about Indian market study as well. And I'm 100% confident that it would also be representative of the trend that I'm talking about, that over the last 2 decades, the risk-taking capabilities of people for innovative solutions has gone high. Something that was having such a big product life cycle, 10 years, 20 years, those products life cycles have reduced to 5 years, because now people adopt whenever you come with a new solution, innovative solution, people take that risk, right? And Mr. Anand Raman, is a great example, right? In early 2000s, when you had lead acid batteries, they were being used for inverters and static purpose, he still picked up that product. If you see today, with the adoption of, and I took some data on the nexon-ev as well, is selling really crazy. Even with people knowing that there is no great infrastructure of charging stations, even knowing that there's no good data available, that nexon-ev's life is 4 years, 3 years, even without knowing that, people are buying that product. And I think that is changing the mentality of Indians as well. Most of us, if you ask me, I mean, we could be very less on early adopters. Our percentage of early adopters are less, but most of us are people who get very easily influenced by people who have adopted that technology. So word of mouth, for Indians is, I've seen a trend, matters a lot. And others says, Jitendra, you go for a nexon-ev, I'm telling you, I will buy it,
Definitely, I would recommend. I thought of buying it, but I went for diesel version. So I would recommend it.
Yeah, but great question, others, and this is the answer really everyone is looking at. And I think with some statistics, inferences, also some macro conditions like how the prices of fuel are going to get impacted, and prices of fuel have gone really high. Maybe it is giving a it is triggering something in the Indian brains that, hey, look, prices are going to keep increasing, but macro factors tell that maybe it's not that way. Maybe, when the demand on the prices fall down, the fuel prices will come down, and that can, like I said, can produce that blip of adoption for EVs.
Yes. Participants, please, if you have any specific queries regarding to innovation and competence destroying, there are very good concepts that have been discussed in this session. So please, if you have any specific question, please you can interact.
Good morning, sir.
Very good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Shahrukh Beg this side. So my question is, when we discuss regarding innovation or innovation management, we often hear about celebration of failure. Okay, one always says that you have to learn how to celebrate your failure. So can you elaborate these terms regarding innovation, that how we can celebrate the failure?
Mm-hmm. Celebrating failure, huh? in corporate, people don't easily do that. But if you slightly sort of change the context from celebrating failure to celebrating learning, people buy into that. So what does that mean really? I mean, a failure typically comes with a lot of learning, right? So if you tried something and it failed miserably in the market, it has taught you a lot of things. By the time you have, through that journey, you've gone through that, it has taught you a lot of things. And that's what I think firms do today. Even though you don't hear that so much that they celebrate failures, they celebrate the learnings that were associated with failures. And I would want you guys to look into the same lens that that as startups, you are by structure itself, you are having that risk capability, you have that risk appetite, but the fear of failure always sort of pushes us back. But imagine if we transform that fear of failure into fear of not learning. That is a killer. It's like my startup is going to die if I don't learn something new in the market. So I mean, the theory of dominant design that we spoke about says that keep experimenting till you hit a de facto design. And only when you hit a de facto design is when you really mint money. That's why you see lots of startups actually lose money, because they're still experimenting, they're still trying to learn as they fail. And fear of not learning is worse than fear of failure.
Thank you, sir.
So, dear participants, we will end the session now, and we will meet back by 11:40. So we will give half an hour break in between, and we will continue the next session by 11:40. Thank you, Jitendra sir. I think you can take some rest.
Yeah, it was great, and thank you so much for being patient listeners, everyone. The session 2 is going to be even more energetic, and I would expect that we take a good break and come with full energy.
Yes. We will spend, I think, still more time on Q&A in the session 2.
Yes.
Thank you all.
Great. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Participants, feedback link again we will be sharing.